Hello, hello, and welcome back to another exciting week of the Daily Friend Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and I'm joined today by Miss Sara. How are you, Sara?
Good, thank you. Thanks, Nick.
And Mr. Terence Corrigan. Terence, how are you?
I'm okay, Nick. I'm okay. He's as okay as one can be in this day and age.
On a
Indeed.
Monday.
Indeed. I should have checked before the show, but is my sound all right to you guys?
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, good. All right, and I hope it is for our listeners too. Let us get started with what's going on. So a couple of things happened since the last show. I think on Thursday we talked with Gabriel and Marius a little bit about what to expect from SONA. And now, of course, we had SONA, the State of the Nation address, where Cyril gave a very, as he does, he gives his grandiose speech, and it's full of we are delivering. But there were some interesting things I thought about the speech, and I'm interested to hear what your takes on it are. I wasn't at the Friday discussion we had in office over what we thought about SONA, but these were sort of my impressions. And the first was there was a little bit of a disconnect, which is that a lot of the stuff he talked about seemed more as though it was suggesting, everything was going well, but we just needed to tweak some things. But that kind of contrasted with the front of his speech, which is all about how, COVID had been this fire that destroyed us, and now we have to regrow anew like Fynbos in the Cape. The other thing was, when I was watching the speech, I had it on one screen and I was playing on my computer on the other. And every now and again, I'd sort of, my attention would drift away and you would just hear these words and numbers flow into your mind. And if you listen to the speech at just that level, at a sort of half-conscious level, it was quite sort of soothing and it sounded good. But the moment you thought about any individual thing he had said, like how much money had been invested, that he's not, that was mostly rubbish, at least from from what I thought of it. So Sara, let me go to you first.
Mm-hmm.
What was your take on the speech overall, and perhaps on some of the specifics? I see that smart cities is an idea that refuses to die.
I thought, to quote our dear leader, CEO, Frans Cronje, it was rubbish. What Ramaphosa seems to do is he seems to go back on an issue and explain it all the way from the beginning, whether it's COVID or any subject. It's almost a way of being seen to deal with the subject instead of actually dealing with the issue. Is you go back and you have this long explanation. I mean, the one that I found truly astonishing was he's telling us what the deleterious effects are of growing unemployment. And you sit there and think, well, we don't need to be told what are the deleterious effects of growing unemployment. We've made plenty of suggestions of what you need to do to alleviate those effects, and that is the last thing that the government's doing. And I mean, essentially, as you say, he kept saying, we're doing this, we're doing that, we've agreed to that, we're sitting on this commission, we're putting in place that plan. It's that there's something sort of almost fairy tale-ish of we are going to do, but we'll never really get there. And just to give you an example of what I find thorough about the way Ramaphosa talks, is he, on the one hand, he's going on very briefly about EWC, expropriation without compensation, how they're going to implement it, and they probably will, because they've got to do something. And they're talking about EWC. They're talking about, at some point, I don't think he raised prescribed assets on this occasion, but there was one other thing, and it was BEE. They're going to ramp up BEE, and then he says we're still a very attractive destination for investment. And I thought, but we're not a very attractive destination we're not an attractive destination at all, either internally or.
There were a whole bunch of contradictions in that speech, and I think this is sort of typical of everything we've seen from Ramaphosa, is the constant fudging. So, on one hand, we're going to triple down on BEE, but we're also going to embark on massive reforms, although he doesn't specify what those are, to make us more attractive to investment. And these two things just don't mix together. And of course, EWC as well doesn't make us an attractive destination. So the speech was full of, if you want to pick out sound bites to give you whatever it was you wanted to hear from that speech, you could find it. There was something for the far left. There was something for those who believe in the reform and free markets and all that. but ultimately it was just a fudge. I mean, Terence, do you think I'm right?
I think that and I've sort of listened to these speeches since the Mandela era. This is probably the worst one ever, and I mean, I include those given by the former president, he who shall not be named, except by people like Col Niehaus. No, it was dreadful. That whole Fynbos metaphor, has this patina of inevitability about it. You have this fire, and that encourages the seeds to germinate, and they come back and they look even better and whatever. Interesting thing about Fynbos is that I think something like 1,800 varieties are critically endangered. They're endangered because of things like invasive species, because of climatic conditions, because of building over the habitat. That actually describes the economy much better. You get to a point where the Fynbos just isn't going to grow anymore. So you've salted the earth. Well, you've salted the policy environment, and but don't worry. For some reason it'll come back. We really don't know or understand this, but it's going to come back, and it's going to come back better, and we'll do all these contradictory things. My personal favorite for the nonsense award was, he said, we are making it easier for business to do business, and his sort of exhibit there was that you can register a company online. Now, I mean, I think it's great. I think registering companies online is the absolute bomb. But you're in a society where the government keeps on changing the rules. If you own a restaurant, you just had your wages and benefits kicked up. The farming minimum wage is pushed up by about 15%. And this is all within the last couple of weeks. Yes, we are going to be doing expropriation without compensation, but we're going to be doing it the right way, not the wrong way. The right way. We're going to tell you what the right way is. We want this to be a surprise. I mean, unfortunately, this is something I say way too often on the show, that words fail me, and they never used to. So maybe this is something that misgovernance circa 2021 is able to do. It's taking my breath away, and not in a good way. But one is just left speechless. But then again, that's the corrosive influence of ideology. I think the one good thing that came out of this was that there wasn't much of an audience of people, saying, well, we're so pleased with this, we could have had more of that. It was generally, there seemed to be an incredulity which you hadn't seen before. The other interesting thing is that the speech itself seemed to be just a rehash, I would say a cut and paste of the economic recovery document. It was almost like they had, like there was no effort made to really write anything. They put that Fynbos imagery in, and that was it. You go back to the Mbeki era, and I think there was a great deal of toxicity that is now playing itself out now. But you could at least get something that was intellectually engaging in his in his speeches, and he could actually point to real-time improvements. Like they built so many houses, and I mean, this was just what I think you're seeing is a case of a government that cannot point to practical victories, but now wants policy or political victories, almost entirely symbolic, and which will compound the actual problems. But this is kind of all they have on offer now.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think that's exactly correct. Two things I want to get from you, Sara. The first is my impression of a lot of the Ramaphosa defenders. They kind of tried to sort of cover the conversation by talking about these sort of very distracting side issues, and that's, I think, a giveaway for me that the speech didn't go down so well. And one of those was there were some who were very upset that, for example, the DA didn't stand and applaud after the speech. Not that there were many DA MPs there. I think there were only like 2 or something. The rest were all offline or online rather. And also I saw some of the sort of woke crowd saying things like, you see, there's all this, instead of focusing on corruption in the ANC, all the criticism is focused on Ramaphosa, which is because, there was an implication that it's because, he's a black man, that's why he's coming under such criticism. So there was a lot of that kind of thing, which to me suggests that there wasn't much of substance to defend in that speech. But the other, go ahead on that.
No. I was just going to say that, I think you've always got a sign of sort of racial equality is when you get heavily criticized because you deserve to be heavily criticized, irrespective of the color of your skin.
Right. No, exactly. I think, though, there was something quite ominous in the Fynbos metaphor, which is he talked about the fire coming through, burning everything away, and then something new and better growing from underneath. Now, you can interpret that in a bunch of ways, and this is very typical of Ramaphosa to be a bit vague, but you can very much see a sort of national democratic revolution slant to that whole thing, which is, we're going to, the old evil economy, which is tainted by white apartheid, is going to be wiped away, and we're going to rebuild our new socialist-y, economy, racialized economy again from the ground. Do you think that's crazy?
It's an alternative and more colorful metaphor for the great economic reset.
Right. Right.
And of course, the thing's quite possible. And I think the sort of slashing and burning to destruction, and then things growing from the ashes, is the sort of nonsense that socialist ideologues indulge in, because that once they've crashed and burned, that's it.
Right.
Nothing grows. Everything remains a burnt out shell, husk, whatever you want to call it. Nothing gets improved by destroying it.
Right.
We're not proteas.
Indeed. And who was it in the ANC who once said, it doesn't matter if the rand falls, we'll pick it up, or something like that?
Oh, I think it was Mokonyane. What was her name? Nomvula.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a WhatsApp conversation. It was the most appalling example of hubris.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is that it goes to the reality that, notwithstanding even Cuba sort of liberalizing in its own way, they don't understand how an economy is supposed to work in order to be successful. It's that simple.
Yeah, there is a strand that runs through a lot of socialist thought, and particularly, I think, in the ANC at the moment, of we need to destroy the capitalist system completely before we can remake it. And that's a very short road to nowhere. Because the remaking part is the hard part, the destroying part.
No. And they talk, you hear them, and he mentioned it in the speech, the development of a capable state. And the premise behind that is that the state can only become capable if the capitalist underpinnings are destroyed. Then we can become a capable state. Nothing stops them from being a capable state if they choose to become a capable state. In fact, we'd have loved them to have been a capable state, but they're not a capable state.
Any final thoughts, Terence, before we move on?
Well, if you look at the economic recovery document, there's actually a line there. The current conjuncture presents an opportunity to reset the South African economy. It's an opportunity to build a new and inclusive economy that benefits all South Africans. So, there it is. As far as what Ramaphosa said, I have a hard time reading too much into it, because I just think it was so facile that I think it was kind of a little beyond what was on what was being presented to read any hidden meanings in. That being said, the idea that somehow after the Great Deluge, we can look forward to a new world
Indeed, that is, I think, at the root of many of our current problems. So, keeping on the sort of troubles deviling the country, let us talk about the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting, which was held over the weekend. I believe it was Sunday evening. And the headlines today are all pushing a very sort of similar view on what happened at this meeting. So I'll just read a couple of them. One headline was the ANC's NEC, busy weekend of decisions, and it spells bad news for Ace Magashule. ANC NEC meeting, Ramaphosa lays down the law in Zuma versus Zondo. ANC NEC concluding meeting, Ace Magashule's days may be numbered. So there's a very common theme running through there. Some of the decisions taken at that ANC meeting over the weekend, and of course the NEC is the highest decision-making body in the ANC between its congresses. Appointment of Kgalema Motlanthe to lead the party election committee to select candidates ahead of the upcoming municipal elections. That Cyril Ramaphosa should lead the presentation relating to allegations of state capture before the Zondo Commission. So Cyril will appear before the Zondo Commission to disband the current interim leadership of the ANC Youth League. And this is the decision that everyone's talking about, which is that the ANC has resolved to adopt newly drafted guidelines calling for those facing criminal charges before courts of law to immediately step aside. Now, of course, this is bad for Ace Magashule, who has got corruption charges against him. On Friday, I think he's appearing in court, or his lawyers are at least. But that's sort of a misreporting, actually, of what happened. Because if you read further into these stories, you see that the ANC has resolved to discuss these further and get buy-in from the National Working Committee in the branches and the provinces. I believe I'm correct in saying. So these guidelines that Ace Magashule must step aside, which apparently was not already implicit in the ANC's constitution, which I believe the Daily Friend actually published a few weeks ago, the ANC's constitution, and you can see it says that you can kick out anyone for bringing the party into disrepute. So apparently that this is, being on corruption charges is not a strong enough reason to kick someone out. So these guidelines are now going to go to branches and working committee meetings to get input from more groups. This really doesn't seem like the victory over Ace that I thought. Terence, what do you make of this?
This is a SONA redux then. No, look, in this case, there has been, let's say, a sort of policy victory in having this policy that if you bring us into disrepute, you're out and whatever. But there's 1,000 reasons why this doesn't really mean what it says. Maybe if this was the second secretary of the food committee of the Postmasburg ANC branch, he'd be out in his ear, and we could all rest assured. When it comes to when it's the secretary general, evidently not. And I don't think people should get too terribly excited about this. one of the things that the NEC was considering was a report by Kgalema Motlanthe and Matthews Posa and apparently a group of other people about how to implement this stand aside resolution. So in other words, the standard resolution is all well and good, but then we need the committee to decide how we implement it as opposed to someone just standing aside. But these things are important. And they came up with the idea then that, or they pointed out with some merit, I must give it to them, that the courts can take an awfully long time. So yes, you can be shunted out of your position, and then you'll spend the next 7 or 8 years in the political wilderness while the wheels of justice turn through the fetid swamp that is our court system. And of course, after you've added your 7 levels of appeal or whatever it is, and your constitutional challenge, you can be out there for a long time. So they sort of come out with this idea that, well, we have to be rational in the way we deal with this. Now, I must confess, I haven't had a chance to read the entire report. I'm not sure if it's publicly available, but I don't think we really got beyond, well, we need to kind of just discuss this. And then the NEC said, well, we need to have further discussions. So yeah, maybe Jesus will come before certain things happen. That seems to be more than a metaphor. It seems to actually be the time standard. So look, I suspect that Mr. Magashule will still be occupying that Secretary General's chair without going to the naughty corner for a long, long time.
Indeed. Sara, you've run disciplinary procedures in organizations before. Is this best practice that the ANC is following?
This is no practice at all. I mean, this is practicing for practicing for practicing. This might be one of the few occasions where the MPA gets through the process of prosecuting him before the ANC deals with him. But in any normal, and this is not, and the ANC is not normal. Its constitution provides for what most organizations will, and that in the event of certain things, well, you're usually actually not just suspended, because you can be suspended for months or years, but you're suspended pending an internal disciplinary hearing as to whether on the balance of probabilities you have brought the organization into disrepute. Now, here I would make the charge that you have been charged with 21 acts of corruption. You cannot possibly bring the ANC into disrepute anymore. Nobody can bring the ANC into disrepute, because everyone's brought the ANC into disrepute. But that's what you do. You lay a charge, not lay a charge. You present him with a charge. You suspend him until you have the information you need to conduct a hearing, and you hold a hearing, irrespective of what's happening in the criminal courts. Which means that in the sphere, almost the sort of private sphere outside of the court system, you can be done in weeks, months, a couple of months at the most. And what you do is you fire for, on the balance of probabilities, you have committed these acts. It's completely irrelevant what a court decides. The owners fire, and it doesn't matter whether they do or don't decide in his favor. As long as you as the organization have decided on the right basis to a reasonable conclusion, given the evidence before you, and he's fired. So no, it's not remotely best practice, but it's certainly the practice I think I would develop if almost everyone in the organization could be subjected to charges of corruption, because you'll have a commission and then a committee, and go back to the commission, go to the committee, and I agree with Terence. I only see Ace getting his just desserts sooner rather than later if Zuma isn't successful at the Zondo Commission. It comes out badly, and when he goes to trial, I think April. So I agree. I think it's all political, and it's all political because you can't have the corrupt pronouncing on the corrupt.
Right. I think it's also worth pointing out that the media has reported with great enthusiasm, I think a few months ago, that Ramaphosa had defeated the corrupt faction or something in the ANC. Totally and completely, and yet we're still sort of sitting with implementation of very basic guidelines.
But can I when Terence says SONA redux, the problem is that this is how they run so much of the country. You put in place commissions, you put in place documents, you put in place regulations, all of which just hamper. And you've got a civil service where a lot of people are in charge of jobs and processes that they just are not capable of doing. They're not trained to do. They don't have the experience. It's
bureaucracy and fudging forever, and that is the Ramaphosa experience. It's just endless fudging of what's going on forever. All right, let's move on to our last topic for today, and that is the devastation to the middle class that COVID lockdowns and the bad policy environment have wrought. So on Friday, I think it was last week, the CEO of Rand Merchant Bank, James Formby, did an interview with Business Day, and he said that a large number of qualified and experienced individuals in their 30s and 40s are leaving the country for better positions overseas. He also went on to say that the infrastructure and development sectors will be the hardest hit by these by people leaving the country. He also said that there's a huge drain on South Africa's skill base. Now, of course, this has been going on for a while, but it really does seem like things have accelerated. There was also a survey done by the National Income Dynamics Survey, which tries to find out how many South Africans are in each income band in the country. And there were some quite terrifying results from that. One shows that between 2017 and June 2020, so sort of halfway through lockdown, the adult population in the middle class contracted from 6.1 million to 2.7 million, which amounts to a reduction of 55%. So more than half of the people rated as middle class just disappeared, basically. And at the other end, the number of people who classify as ultra poor, which is those earning below minimum wage, increased by 6.6 million, or 54%. So that's really devastating, because it means the tax base is shrinking, the consumer base is shrinking, and the number of people who are desperate on grants and that kind of thing to survive may have shot up a lot. Terence, your thoughts on this?
There are too many thoughts for me to express, but just a couple here. That sort of devastation of your middle class, people who are articulate, who are aspirant, and who have tasted that life, that is profoundly politically destabilizing. That's often held to be one of the major factors that produce real fascism. Nazism in Germany or fascism in Italy, economic dislocation after the war, the Great Depression, and all that sort of thing. People who had lived a decent life saw their prospects wiped out, and they found something else, which was extreme nationalism to sort of fill the void. So yeah, that's profoundly worrying. And I think even for those of us who still have it reasonably good, I challenge anyone to say that things haven't been impacted. Just think about where you might have just flipped your credit card out to make an Amazon purchase. I imagine all of us think very carefully about doing that sort of thing now. But yeah, one can blame the general globalized environment to some extent. I think this is at the world. This is the shot that was heard around the world. The question is, why do South Africans, and this is no longer and it hasn't since the 90s, been a case predominantly of white Anglophones, see better futures for themselves elsewhere. And I think there you have plenty of examples of countries around the world that have taken big hits, where for whatever reasons your affected people stay put because they believe that this can be sorted out. Think of the Korean crisis in the 90s, for instance. I think this is perhaps something that the president might well go and smell the fynbos and consider. Why is it that so many of the people that you need to make the country work just don't think the country wants is worth working for?
Indeed. Sarah, your final thoughts in 30 seconds.
I think look, it is that age group, that 30, 40 years old, that you rely on to become the people who make things run, who work, who train other people, etc. And those are the people who are going. And it's entirely it's economics, it's everything, but everything is political. It has its origins from everything that is going wrong, whether it be education, the threat against health, the future, the failure to make a dent in crime. Those are all the factors that push people out from leaving the country. And as Terence says, if anyone wants to pull the race card, it's nonsense, because it's across the board.
Right. And this, I think, all feeds into the topic we discussed on Wednesday, which is that the ANC's political prospects, may in fact be diminishing. And I think this speaks to that as well. If you can go and check out our episode on Wednesday called "Is the ANC on Life Support?" I believe. Anyway, that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please share it, like it, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you tomorrow on the next episode of The Daily Friend. Have a great day, everyone.